Have you ever wondered where some of our oldest stories come from? Not just the tales we tell around a campfire, but the ones that have shaped civilizations. Deep within the ancient texts of the Book of Genesis, we find one such story. It's about a man named Noah, a great flood, and his 3 sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth. These 3 brothers are said to be the ancestors of all humanity, the progenitors from whom every nation on earth descended. It's a simple, powerful narrative that has echoed through millennia, a foundational myth for billions of people across the globe. The story goes like this. After the flood, Noah planted a vineyard. One day he drank wine and fell into a drunken sleep, unclothed and vulnerable. How does a simple story become a global justification for oppression? Early scholars began to associate each of Noah's sons with the 3 known continents, shaping beliefs across Europe, Africa, and Asia. Japheth was linked to Europe, Shem to Asia, and Ham to Africa. At first, these associations were not about superiority, but about explaining the diversity of humanity. Over time, this mapping took on a darker meaning. The curse of Canaan was gradually extended to all of Ham's descendants, fueling myths that justified enslavement across continents. This belief became especially powerful during the rise of the transatlantic, trans-Saharan, and Indian Ocean slave trades. Arab, European, and other traders all found ways to use biblical stories as divine rationale for systems built on cruelty. If a people were believed to be biblically cursed to serve, then enslaving them was seen as fulfilling a divine plan across empires, from the Atlantic to the Indian Ocean. The story of Ham was no longer just a story. It became a theological weapon, a tool used by many societies to dehumanize millions for economic gain, from West Africa to the shores of India. As the 19th century dawned, this religious myth sought a more scientific foundation. This gave birth to the Hamitic hypothesis. This wasn't just about a curse anymore. It was a full-blown racial theory dressed in the language of anthropology and history. The hypothesis claimed that everything of value in Africa, advanced civilizations, complex statecraft, sophisticated technologies, was not the work of indigenous Black Africans. During the scramble for Africa, the Hamitic hypothesis provided a powerful justification for European colonization. Colonial administrators identified certain groups as Hamitic, creating ethnic favoritism that would erupt into horrific violence decades later. The Hamitic hypothesis was, in essence, a pseudoscientific fantasy created to uphold a system of racial hierarchy. So how do we know the Hamitic hypothesis is just a myth? We look at the evidence. Modern DNA studies have completely dismantled the idea of distinct, separate races. Genetic research shows that human origins are in Africa, and all human populations are African in their deepest ancestry. The idea of a Hamitic race has no basis in biology. It is a social construct, not a scientific reality. Archaeological findings across the continent show a long and continuous history of local innovation and development. The magnificent stone structures of Great Zimbabwe were the product of the indigenous Shona people. African achievements born from African ingenuity. The University of Timbuktu was one of the world's great centers of learning centuries before many European universities were founded. And then, there was Mansa Musa, the legendary emperor of Mali. Renowned as one of the wealthiest individuals in history, Mansa Musa's reign transformed Mali into a beacon of prosperity and culture. His famous pilgrimage to Mecca dazzled the world, as he traveled with a caravan laden with gold, distributing wealth along his route. Under his rule, the city of Timbuktu flourished as a center of learning, trade, and the arts, attracting scholars and merchants from across the globe. The grandeur of Mali's empire, its bustling markets, and the spread of knowledge during Mansa Musa's time stand as a testament to Africa's enduring legacy of achievement and ingenuity. Why is it so important to dismantle this old myth? Because ideas have consequences. The Hamitic hypothesis justified slavery, colonialism, and even genocide. When we believe lies about our shared past, we build our present on a foundation of sand. Learning the truth is about empowerment, restoring the rich, complex history of a continent that was deliberately erased. For people everywhere, it is about appreciating the full, diverse tapestry of the human story. When we replace myths with facts, we see each other more clearly. We must always ask, where did this idea come from? Who benefits from it? What does the evidence actually say? By exposing the falsehoods of the past, we clear the way for a better future, where we are defined not by ancient curses, but by our shared capacity for knowledge, empathy, and cooperation. That is a story worth telling. Personal reflections, 23 videos into the journey. My initial objective was to construct a Hamitic hypothesis. The first angle I explored was whether the so-called curse of Ham is a false doctrine, one widely held by much of the church and religious tradition. A quick rebuttal arises. Is there even a curse on Ham? A careful reading of scripture reveals that only one of Ham's sons, Canaan, was cursed. Neither Ham himself nor his other sons were subject to this curse. But I take the inquiry further. I examine the success of Ham, his worldly achievements. If Ham was cursed to be poor or enslaved, why do we see evidence of prosperity and empire building among his descendants? I began with the not-so-obvious son, Cush, and have now moved into the Ark of Egypt, founded by Ham's son, Mizraim. If Ham was destined to be a bottom feeder, how did one of his sons establish one of the most powerful civilizations of the ancient world? To build my personal opinion on the subject, I explore both the positive and negative interactions between Ham's descendants and Israel. In one case of conflict, I argue that King Zerah, who opposed Asa, was likely from Sudan, supported by the Lubim, a people most likely from Libya. The Lubim also appear in connection with Nineveh, a city central to the story of Jonah and the great fish. Another rebuttal to the curse narrative involves Ham's exploits in Europe and Asia. This raises the question, is Ham truly exclusive to Africa? Or has the curse of Ham been used as a theological excuse to justify the exploitation of Africa, framing Hamites as inherently subjugated and thus exploitable? Is there nothing wrong with that, according to this logic? Are Africans Ethiopians or Canaanites? And if Ethiopians, is there any biblical precedent where Canaanites are referred to as Ethiopians? Most theologians misinterpret the curse of Canaan. Let me explain why. They focus on material consequences, skin color, slavery, servitude, all worldly interpretations. But what about the spiritual curse of Canaan? That dimension is rarely discussed. Here's a provocative thought. Did Jesus urge his disciples to be like Canaanites? Not in the sense of idol worship, of course, but in humility. Did he suggest that his followers embody the humility of those whom the world despises? Jesus consistently sided with the poor, the oppressed, and the downtrodden, those whom misinterpretations of Scripture have historically marginalized. Yes, Canaan was cursed, but not in the way most assume. Let's even entertain the harsh logic of the world, that the sins of the fathers justify the punishment of their descendants. My response? One story, one rebuttal. King David stole the wife of Uriah the Hittite, a descendant of Heth, son of Canaan. The Hittites built a great Bronze Age empire in Anatolia, yet this is often overlooked. Africans, we're told, are Canaanites with no great accomplishments. Really? Perhaps Bathsheba was extraordinarily beautiful, or perhaps David thought he could exploit a Canaanite because he was an inferior subject with lesser rights. God's punishment of David for this transgression was severe, but David endured it and remained loyal. Yet the world continues to exploit Canaanites, failing to learn from David's story. The world is wrong about the curse of Canaan, and so are many theologians who align with worldly interpretations. My personal opinion on the subject seeks to unravel these misconceptions and confront the unanswered questions. What is the curse of Ham? What is the curse of Canaan? Have we truly understood the Bible, or are there still mysteries like the ocean floor waiting to be discovered? To answer these questions, I dig deep into every mystery of Ethiopia. What is the true meaning of Amos 9:7? Are you not like the Ethiopians to me, O children of Israel? God compares Israel to Ethiopia. Why? He also says he will gather his worshippers from beyond the rivers of Ethiopia. Is that not the land of Ham? Why would God gather his people from a land supposedly cursed? God asks, can the Ethiopian change his skin? We know that some Israelites fled to sub-Saharan Africa when their state collapsed. Across the continent, many Africans claim Israelite heritage. Some go to great lengths to prove they are not Hamites, unlike European Jews who are widely accepted, or Asian Jews like the Pashtun, who claim descent from the lost tribes. Were not the Israelites scattered to all four corners of the earth, including Africa? The point is not to seek validation from the world, but approval from God. What does the world know? If the Roman guard couldn't distinguish Paul from an Egyptian? If Zipporah's sisters couldn't tell Moses wasn't Egyptian? If Joseph's brothers didn't recognize him as Egyptian, and Egyptians are Hamites? Why should the world fare any better? Is it not wiser to lower our expectations of worldly recognition and focus instead on divine approval? Welcome to Tales of Cush, where we dive deep into biblical complexities and break them down piece by piece. Our mission is to deliver the most compelling content on Africa's presence in the Bible, and to challenge the narratives that have long obscured its truth.